Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Shaakira. So today's video is going to be about graduate school. Yes, we are talking about grad school because usually what I try to do, I'm saying usually like this is something that happens often, but when I graduated from undergrad, I did a video that was basically my experience in undergrad at FAMU, which is an HBCU. So I knew that when I graduated with my master's, I wanted to do another video like that, talking about my experience at Florida State University, but also talking about like whether or not you should go to grad school. So hence the paraphernalia with Seminoles over here and the mascot here. I have my notes here to try to keep me on track, and I wrote down some things that I absolutely positively have to tell you about. But basically this video is going to be telling you my experience and also me telling you whether it's worth it or not to go to grad school, basically. So the first thing, I guess I should start from the beginning. Let's start from the beginning. So rewind. I attended undergrad at FAMU. If you are new here and you didn't know, FAMU is an HBCU in Tallahassee, Florida. I got my degree in business administration from FAMU, and my concentration was in marketing. Keep that in mind. Now, that was my overall degree, and then during my second or third year there, I can't really remember, I wanted to do theater. Like, I wanted my minor to be theater, and I went and talked to the what's it called, what's the person called, like the, not a guidance counselor, that's like high school, but the advisor. I went and talked to the advisor there, and she was kind of basically telling me, like, because I had a friend there, both of us wanted to do theater, and she kind of told us the same thing, like you couldn't be a business student and minor in theater. So I'm like 19, so I'm like, oh, okay. Not thinking like that doesn't make sense. How can I minor in something else but I can't minor in theater? But you know, everything happens for a reason. So I ended up minoring in PR. Wouldn't change it for anything. So I would take business classes for my overall degree, and then, you know, I had classes to get a minor in public relations from the J School. The J School at FAMU is the School of Graphic Design, the School of Journalism and Graphic Design. Don't quote me, but that, you know, I would take classes in that school. So it was nearing time for me to graduate, and so for me, receiving a master's, like going to graduate school for my master's, it wasn't a matter of like if I was going to do it. For me, it was always when I go to grad school, because when I was younger, my mom was taking classes to get her minor, so my mom got her master's, and I guess like it was just always one of those things that was like in the back of my mind, like my mom did it, I'm going to do it, and it was just always something that I knew I wanted to do. I always wanted to get my master's degree. So like I said, a matter of when I went and got it and not if I went and got it. So around my senior year, the dean of J School, the journalism school, she was my soror. She was a Zeta as well, and I would just go by her office from time to time and talk to her and stuff. And so I went and talked to her when it was almost time for me to graduate, and I was just talking to her about what my next steps were, and I was telling her what I wanted to do. And by this time, the film bug had kind of film and television had kind of arise to the front of my mind again, because for those 4 years I had just been concerned with business. But then near the end, I was like, SBI is teaching me to go and work for someone. I don't want to do that. So yeah, I started researching different schools, and so I was talking to her, and she was like, why don't you apply to Northwestern? So Northwestern is in Illinois, I believe, and that was her alma mater. She had gotten her degree from Northwestern, and she was like, I'll write you a recommendation letter, blah blah blah. And I was like, okay, but I don't do snow. I know that may sound like a crazy reason, but I'll tell you the real reason. I was like, I don't really do snow. And so I was like, I had been thinking about Florida State. And so she was like, okay, Florida State is a good school too for what you want to do. And so we had been talking, like bouncing ideas off of each other, and she was like integrated marketing. And I was like, okay, because marketing was kind of like my concentration in business school. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. But I had been researching FSU, and I saw that they had a certificate program for digital video production. And so with that certificate, I'll tell y'all a little bit more about it later. But with that certificate, you can learn more about like film and documentary and things like that. So I was like, that sounds like what I want to do. And so I was like, I'll just like get my master's in marketing, and then but I'm really here for digital video production. Like, that was the back of my mind. So she ended up we came to that conclusion that I would apply to Florida State University. I applied, I took the GRE, I got in. Now, my master's program at Florida State was Integrated Marketing Communications, IMC for short. And IMC was under the School of Communications, and basically integrated marketing. Whenever people ask me like, what does that mean? Like, whenever they say like, what's your degree in? And I say integrated marketing communications, they're like, oh wow, that's a lot. What is that? And I basically say it's marketing on steroids. That's it. Like, you learn more about marketing, you learn how to reach certain target audiences, you learn about subgroups of people, which is something that I really enjoy learning about in grad school. So you study groups of people, you study white people, you study black people, you study Native Americans, you study Hispanic and Latino cultures, you study Asian cultures, and you just like dive into what matters to different people, what their communities are like, how to reach them. So that's basically what IMC was about for me. And so when I got there, I started in the summer, and I'll tell y'all the secret. So when I applied to FSU, she's not an advisor. Is she an advisor? I don't know. I think she was like an advisor. She basically said that my enrollment into FSU was going to be based upon my performance in my first semester. So basically, like, if I didn't get a certain GPA, I think it was like a 3.2 or something like that during my first semester that summer, then I wouldn't be able to continue the program. And I thought that was odd because I got a really nice score on my GRE. And my grades at FAMU weren't bad. So I was like, that's kind of weird, but okay. So I did really well my first semester. During the summer, I like buckled down because I'm like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, if I don't do well this semester, then I'm not going to be able to finish this program. So I did well. I can't remember what my GPA was. It might have been like a 4.0. I don't know if I may have gotten all A's that first semester. So, but that's another story for another day. I'll tell y'all about that another time. So, you know, at that point I was like, all right, so we're in the IMC program. I knew in the back of my mind that I wanted to get my certificate in digital video production. One of my teachers that summer, her name was Dr. Cindy Chappa, and she was a godsend. If you end up enrolling in this program, please connect with Dr. Cindy Chappa. She is everything, like everything. And she kind of like mentioned this other certificate that was available, and the certificate was in multicultural marketing communications. I'm looking at it on the wall because I have both of my certificates on the wall. So it was in multicultural marketing. So I was like, okay, there were like 4 classes that you needed to get the certificate, and I was like, okay, I already have to take 2 of these under the IMC umbrella, so what's 2 more classes to be able to get this certificate? So I ended up enrolling into both certificate programs. So this is something for you to remember if you end up going to Florida State and that's something that you are interested in. You have to enroll in those programs your second semester, I believe, because I messed up and I took a class before I was supposed to take another class because I didn't know that the class was only offered during the fall semester. So I had to like backtrack in my last semester to go back and take that first class that I needed for digital video production. But just make sure you talk to people and make sure they're giving you the right information, because sometimes, I'm just gonna leave it at that. So I ended up, enrolling into both of these programs. Wouldn't change it for anything. With the multicultural marketing communications program, I was able to go to Chicago and Los Angeles, California. I have vlogs on both of those trips. They paid for the conference registration because it was under the AHA conference, which is a Hispanic advertising conference. And you just like go to the conference during the day, and at night, like, we would go and eat and go sightsee and stuff like that. And it was just really nice. It was my first time going to Chicago, and it was my second time going to Los Angeles. So it was something new, like something to take advantage of if that's something that you want to do. The school paid for like housing, your registration. Did they pay for food? Or did they give us like a stipend? I can't remember. But it's like the only thing you pay for is like your airfare, I believe. Like airfare, and that was it. So I really enjoyed that, and I did want to tell y'all about that just in case that's something that you're interested in. So another thing that I participated in during grad school was something called Seminole Productions. So how Seminole Productions works is they are geared towards undergrad students, I believe. It teaches them how to work the cameras during the different athletic events and stuff like that. And also, if their major is like journalism, it teaches them how to do like on camera presence and stuff like that. But as a grad student, you can get involved in that as well. So that's something that I got involved in. One of my friends who had attended FAMU, and I've known her for like years, but she was like almost graduating when I enrolled in the program, and she told me about it. So I emailed the guy who was over the program, and he hooked me up. He got me in the door, and basically that was one of the experiences that I really enjoyed at the school too, because you're like, so when I was doing it, you would be like behind the camera, like in the control rooms, and you see how things work. So when you're watching different programs on TV, like television programs, sports programs, stuff like that, like there's people in this control room that have these microphones that are telling the different camera operators like, okay, camera 1, get ready because we're about to come to you, cut camera 1, go to camera 2. So it was just so interesting to see and be a part of. And then I was also involved with the replays. So there is a separate control room for replays, where when you are watching football and stuff like that, or basketball, you know how like a player does something and then after they do it, like they show a replay. So there is a specific person in the control room that like marks those times where there's a really nice play and they replay it. So I was like involved with that. And I was like on the field, game days and stuff. It was like really hectic and nerve-wracking at the same time, but it was really nice, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. So that's something that you can also get involved in if you're interested in that kind of stuff. One more thing I wanted to mention during grad school was one of my professors, Malia Brooker. She is a filmmaker, and so I took 2 classes from her, documentary editing, something else. I forgot the title of the other class, but basically both classes were, so if y'all have like been watching my vlogs from grad school, y'all already like, you're familiar with this stuff that I'm talking about. But we would like be able to check out cameras and camera equipment and make documentaries, work on your own stuff. It was just really nice. So my professor, she had a screening for one of her films that she shot over in Haiti. I think she shot it in Haiti. And this was during my last semester. Yeah, this is during my last semester. And she let me go to the screen. Well, it was open for everyone, but like she let me interview people at the end of the screening and record them and stuff like that. And I have footage from that as well. But that was a really nice experience for me, something that I really enjoyed being a part of, and just being able to say I did that. It was really nice. So now that kind of sums up my experience at Florida State. There's so many things for you to get involved in. Now, as a Black person, you kind of have to find your community at Florida State. I will say that you have to find your community of people. It was a culture shock for me because all my life, I went to a black preschool, I went to a black K through 12 school, I went to a HBCU, which was black people. So it was my first time being in the minority in an institution. So it was different and I wasn't used to it. And there, I'm not gonna lie, like there were certain times where you experience microaggressions. And some of them weren't microaggressions, some of them were straight up in your face, like during class time from professors. So it is one of those things, like you have to build thick skin. You have to build thick skin, and you also have to be able to advocate for yourself, because if you don't, no one else will. Like, you have to advocate for yourself. One of the issues that people ask about is like, it's a lot of people because it is a big school. So people say like, it's a lot of people there, like I don't want to be just a number. I will say that like if you are doing undergrad, you probably are just a number, but in grad school, like your classes are, one of my classes, like the cap was 15 people, and then another class, I think the most people we've had in the class is like 30, and even then, like by the time drop ad ends, you end up in a class with like 20 people. So you know everyone's name. The program is a small program. So I don't think you have to worry about being like just a number in grad school. Yeah, you have to be strong-willed and you have to be able to advocate for yourself. And it was a culture shock for me. It was a culture shock for me going there, but I still wouldn't trade it for the world. Like, I enjoyed myself. Now, when people ask me, should I go to grad school? My answer is, it depends. Like, it depends. It depends on who you are. It depends on where you are. It depends on whether you want to have any more student loan debt. If you have like undergrad student loan debt and you aren't receiving scholarships, it depends on what you want to do, because there are some things that don't require a master's degree. Like, I'm not gonna lie, they don't require higher education past your bachelor's degree. But I will say this, I am an advocate for receiving all the education that you can. If you can go to school, go to school. Like, to me, that is, and I will stay on this hill, like that is a hill that I am willing to die on. Like, go to school. And some people say like, well, there's nothing they can teach me in school that I can't learn on my own. That is true to an extent. But for me, I know the kind of person I am. Like, I can have access to all the information in the world, but if I don't have like a strict schedule or something to follow, who's to say that I'm going to follow through with this? So like, being in school, being in a controlled environment where you have to read, where you have to study in order to pass the test, that's something that helps a lot of people, and it helps me. So yeah, and there are certain things like hands-on experiences that I would not have been able to learn on my own, especially with like digital video production, learning about microphones and camera and equipment and things like that. Those were things that I don't have access to on my own. Those expensive cameras and those expensive microphones and stands and expensive lights and stuff, that would have been things that I would have had to purchase on my own, but instead I got access to it through the school for free. Well, outside of your tuition, but for free. And also like being in an environment where you have an expert in the field that you are studying who can answer questions on a dime. Like, when you have questions about things, but say if you are studying those things on your own, if you have a question, I mean, you can Google it, but who's to say that the answer is going to be there? But if you're in a classroom and you have a question about something, you have a teacher, a professor right there to answer your questions. So again, I'm always going to be an advocate for going to school. Now, another advantage I would say of going to grad school is that you learn so much about yourself. I met new people in grad school. I did new things in grad school. I was able to branch out and go places by myself. So like, I would go to games by myself and stuff like that, which is something that I didn't do in undergrad, because at FAMU everybody knew everybody, and like you didn't go anywhere by yourself. You didn't eat by yourself. You didn't go to games by yourself. You didn't do anything by yourself. You always had a group of people to go with. But at FSU, I didn't have that. So I kind of just like, if I wanted to go, I had to go by myself. Okay, I had to switch over to my other camera. Hopefully it looks fine. I haven't used this camera in so long. But I have questions from my Instagram where I had asked people, what questions do you have about grad school? I'll answer them. So let's get into them. So the first one was, what GRE book do you recommend? I used 2 GRE books. I used Manhattan Prep's GRE book, and I also used the 5-pound GRE book. That's literally the name of it, the 5-pound GRE book, because it is 5 pounds. It's heavy. And I'll put 2 pictures of them. I'm sure that they have like new editions of them, but those are the 2 that I used. And I also have a blog post on how I studied for the GRE and some tips to help you, so I'll put that in the description box and also in the comment section, just in case you are getting ready for the GRE. But with everything going on, I think like a lot of schools aren't requiring you to, hold on, this thing is crooked. Yeah, I think with everything going on, a lot of schools aren't requiring people to take the GRE, but just in case, you know, for future reference, those are the things that I use. Someone said, what was the hardest part of being in grad school? The hardest part of being in grad school, I feel like a lot of people would say the workload, because it's a lot of reading. It is a lot of reading. So if you are a reader, God help you, because it's a lot of reading. But the hardest part, I mean, to me, the hardest part had nothing to do with like the curriculum or work. To me, the hardest part was just like getting into a new culture, like for me. But if you are attending an HBCU, you probably won't have that problem. Next, how did you decide on the right program? I mentioned that earlier. I had talked to an advisor, someone I trusted. So find someone that you trust and who has been someone you admire, and also someone who's doing what you would like to do eventually or something similar, and talk to them about their journey, what did they do, and you can kind of model what you do from what they did. And yeah, how long did you study for the GRE? I studied a few months. I got into grad school in May of 2017. That's when I started. Well, that's when I got in May of 2017, and I want to say I had been studying since like January. So from January up until I took the test, I may have taken the test in like March or April. I had been studying, so a few months, maybe like 2 to 3 months prior to taking the test. That's how long I studied. Someone said, advice for those who took time off, GRE tips, financial aid, help paying. Okay, first, that's kind of a few questions in one. Advice for those people who took time off. So I was someone who took a little time off from school because I wasn't sure where I wanted to go, and like I was kind of waiting. I was working. Like, you can get into that, like the work, and I don't suggest it. I don't suggest graduating from undergrad and like going straight into work, because it can be kind of hard for you to adjust to getting back in school. So for me, I graduated from FAMU December 2016. Like I said, I started school at FSU May 2017, so the following year. So from the time I graduated in December up until the time I started at FSU the next summer, I wasn't in school. I was working, and it was a nice job. It was cool. The people were nice and everything like that. But when I got into grad school, it was, and they tried to like accommodate me, but it just wasn't gonna work. Like it wasn't going to work for me to be able to go to grad school full-time and also be working at the job, because it was a full-time position and I wasn't able to cut down to part-time or anything like that. And then I needed time to study too. So if you take time off, I don't suggest anything longer than a few months, because when it's time to go back, you might be like, I don't really know, maybe I don't need to. So if you take time off, it's fine, but I just wouldn't suggest anything longer than like 4 to 5 months, because after that it's probably going to be hard for you to get back into like the mindset of being in school. GRE tips, again, I will link that in the description and also in the comment section. Financial aid / help paying. Okay, so I received a scholarship from a program, the Grad program. I tell everybody about this program who is involved in marketing, advertising in that space, and communications. So I received a scholarship from them in 2018. So I paid for school using loans, but I did receive that scholarship from them, which was a tremendous help for me. And it's for students of color, so black students, Hispanic students, Asian students, and they fly you somewhere. So we flew to New York. I have a vlog on that too. I met so many people, some people who I still talk to today. So look for scholarships in your designated area, and also talk to people who are advisors or faculty within the school. And I went and met with someone who was in the School of Communications before I even applied to the school. So it's kind of like you're interviewing them. Like, they want your money, like they want you to come to the school, especially if you have a nice resume, if you have things going for yourself. Like, of course they want you to come to the school. So I went and met with her prior to even applying, and I was just kind of like getting questions, like asking her questions about the program, like what do you all do, what do your graduates do after this, like stuff like that. And she was just open to everything, and she told me about the Grad program, and she was like, it was funny, she was like, well, she was white, so she was like, well, you're black, you're a woman, so that kind of sets you up for different scholarships and things like that. And she was like, look into, you know, contingent upon you coming here, look into this scholarship called the Grad scholarship. It's for students of color, so there's a good chance that you'll get it. I got it, she was right. And I actually emailed her after I got it, telling her thank you for telling me about it. So talk to people, talk to faculty and staff, and ask them, like, do you know about any scholarships that I may fit? So do your research. Someone said, how did you manage balancing work and coursework? I did work during grad school. So after I quit that first job that I was at before I got accepted, I didn't work for like a few months, and then I started at a state job. And I was lucky enough to have a boss who was like, this is not the end of the road for you, so if you need to leave here and go study, go do that. Like, if there's a day that you have a test coming up and you feel like you need to stay home and study for that test, do that. Everyone isn't lucky enough to have that, or blessed enough to have someone like that. Like, some people feel like, I don't care if you're in school, you're still an employee, so you still need to be dedicated to here. And I was dedicated to that job too, but she was just like always reminding me that school is first. So if you can find a job, well, and she was a black woman, so you know, so if you can find a job that has an environment like that, I highly recommend you do so. Finding one that reminds you that this is not the end all be all. I don't want you here forever, because I want you to finish your degree. I want you to move on from here and do something else. Like, if you can find an environment like that, keep that. But when it came to managing work and coursework, I just, like, if I needed to be off, I would tell her, like, I have a test or I need to study for this. But I pulled a lot of all-nighters. Like, there were a lot of times where I was at the school 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, especially when it started getting time for me to like create short films for classes and things like that. I would be at the school till like midnight. So yeah, like I pulled a lot of all-nighters when it came to my coursework and things like that. Someone said, what was the most difficult part of grad school? I feel like I answered that. Yeah, I answered that earlier. How was your study? How was your study? I don't know if that means like how was the program. The program was really nice. It was a small program, like I said, so it was like, you know, like we were like a family. Well, hold on. Most of us were like a family, and there were like 9 black people in the entire program. Hold on. I said 9 black people. But it may have been less than that. So like we created a community within ourselves, because it was kind of like, okay, it's only us here, so we would study together. We would go to the movies in the middle of the day. Like, you don't have class? Okay, I don't have class either. Okay, you don't have class until 6? Okay, we can go catch a movie, or we can go get something to eat. So like we created our own community. So like in that regard, it was nice having people to lean on and converse with, and also to like get some understanding. So like if I wasn't good, if I didn't understand something in statistics, I could ask Jamie or Darylyn or someone who's like, do you understand this? So to me, it was fine. How do you decide what program is for you? Find a program that ultimately will put you in the position to be where you want to be, or go where you want to go. I knew that my program, I knew the digital video production program was a good program. I knew that, well, I didn't know, but I did read a few things where the alumni were doing things that I wanted to do after I graduated. So if you look into different alumni, like I saw a black woman who was like creating films and things like that, and I was like, oh, perfect, you know, that's what I want to do. So look into a program that has alumni that are doing things that you want to do ultimately, ones who will put you in a position to win. So I graduated last year, 2019, December, and I still to this day, I just sent an email a few days ago, I still to this day email different faculty and staff at the school about different questions that I have about my field. I still receive emails from my teacher. Like, one of my professors texted me the other day and was like, just checking in on you, making sure everything's good. One of my professors, she emailed me a few months ago, and she was like talking about a mentorship with someone out in Los Angeles who is working in the field that I ultimately want to be in. So really do your research. Like, go and meet with people at the school before you even apply, and see where their head is, because sometimes I feel like you can enter a program that is like, I don't care what you do, like I don't care what happens to you after you get this degree, like you're on your own. But I can really genuinely say that for me, in my experience, I chose the perfect program. And there were people there that like genuinely care about you, genuinely want to see you win. So if you can find that, go with that. Okay, someone said, what drew you to attend grad school at FSU? Did you consider anywhere else? Yep, like I mentioned earlier, to me my 2 choices were Florida State and Northwestern. But again, like I told my sorrow, like I was like, I don't do snow, but in my head I was like, I really want to go to FSU because they have digital video. So that's what drew me to FSU ultimately. Like, it wasn't even the IMC program. Like, that was nice, that was cool, but I went under the guise of like, I want to do film and digital video, and I want to work with cameras, and this school has a program for me to do that while I'm getting my master's. So that's what drew me to Florida State. And why did you decide to go? Like I said, my mom had her master's degree, and when I was a kid, she would like be coming home late from classes and stuff like that. So like in my head, it wasn't even like a question of if I want to get my master's. Like, do I want to get my master's? Like, that wasn't even something that crossed my mind. It was when I get it, or like when I go to grad school, because I was just like, I'm always gonna go get my master's. For me, that was my experience. So that is all the questions that I have. Thank y'all for sending them in. And I hope that if you have any more questions about like the grad school experience, whether you should go to grad school, if a program fits for you, well, I can't answer every question about every program because I don't have experience in every program. But if you have questions concerning Florida State University, or like my experience in grad school, any questions that you have concerning any questions that I can answer, you can shoot them to me in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to answer every single last one of them. And you can also reach out to me on Instagram at Shaakira White, and you can send me a DM. Some DMs, Instagram is kind of funky because you know they like filter DMs and stuff like that, so I don't always see all of them, but if I do see them, I'll get to them. But it's probably best to just leave it down here. So that is all I have. I hope that you all enjoyed it. We out.